Thank you very much, Senator McCormick. Very honored to be here. My first love is news, and I have a feeling we're going to make news in this room today. It's very exciting to be here. And pardon the pun, a lot of energy went into organizing this. Can we have a round of applause for not only the senator, but his staff, because they really have worked hard. Herding this many cats, and there are influential cats involved here today, is not easy, and they've done a great job with it. Senator, you've chosen the perfect city and the perfect campus for this summit, for here we are at the crossroads of Pennsylvania's energy past and its energy future. I recently, 4th of July, I went to some museums in Pittsburgh. I visited the city. An amazing fact that during World War II, and Gene Yawn knows this, during World War II, the city of Pittsburgh itself produced more steel than all of the Axis powers combined. For the younger people in the room, the Axis powers were Japan, Italy, and Germany. It was mostly fueled by coal, and that steel mostly fueled the Allied victory. But I also learned that in the 1930s and 1940s in the city of Pittsburgh, before what were called smoke controls, street lights would go on at 11 a.m. The air was so black and thick with that smoke. So when it comes to energy, it has always been a balancing act. Everyone wants clean air and clean water, good paying jobs, the national security peace of mind of being energy independent, while ensuring that seniors on fixed incomes can still afford to turn on the lights, and they're not being squeezed out of the market by big business. So as with all big issues, there are and always will be competing interests and differing opinions, and I can assure you in the room today and what we're going to hear today, there are differing opinions, and that's a good thing. I also learned on my fact-finding tour that Pittsburgh has 446 bridges, which is the most in the world and 3 more than Venice, Italy, though I'd like to go to Venice, Italy to count. 446 bridges in this city, and perhaps we can build a few bridges today on the very important issue of energy. I also must admit I'm intrigued, my last Pittsburgh fun fact, that at 12 per 10,000 residents, there are more bars in Pittsburgh than any other American city. Oh, I know some of you found that out last night. Do with that information what you will, but wait until after our summit. My role today and this morning is to be the MC, keep the conversation going. I'll be facilitating transitions and introducing our very distinguished speakers. As you just heard from Senator McCormick, the morning program designed around 4 comprehensive panels that will explore critical topics relating to the AI race and what it will take to power and lead during this pivotal time. We'll examine the case for Pennsylvania as a national leader in AI and describe how we are leading the way. We'll also dive deep into how Pennsylvania is already demonstrating this leadership, exploring Amazon's recent investment in our state as a case study. And finally, we'll discuss powering the AI revolution, what's needed and where investment is occurring. And we also have some side conversations with, oh, by the way, former Texas Governor and Energy Secretary Rick Perry, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, and other surprise guests. Quickly, housekeeping. Before we get started, please turn your phones off or place them on silent. I'll do this at my peril. Going to put my Eagles phone on silent as we do that. I recognize where we are. And I recognize the Steelers have a lot more Super Bowls. I'm aware. For now. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, please write them on the cards. We're available at the door. You can provide them to one of our volunteers or to me to hand to our moderators. And my goal is to ensure these panels stay on time, which I've already failed miserably. We're running a little bit late, but the information is certainly well worth it. So let's get started. We're going to begin with the fundamental question of our time. How do we position ourselves to win in the AI race? Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Dina McCormick, who brings extensive experience, having worked and contributed significantly in the areas of business, investing, and government service, names such as Goldman Sachs. She's on the board at ExxonMobil. She and her husband released in April a book. It's on the New York Times bestselling author of Who Believed in You? The Power of Transformative Mentoring. And the senator was good enough to call me last night. I was driving with my kids, and his name comes up on the screen, and he just wanted to make sure everything was okay for today. And I hung up, and my son said, "Is that the senator?" And I said, "No, that's Dina Powell's husband." Please welcome Dina Powell. Our panelists, John Gray, President, Chief Operating Officer of Blackstone. Khaldoon Mubarak, Khaldoon Mubarak, Managing Director and Group CEO of Mubadala Investment Company. Renee Haas, CEO of ARM and Board Director of SoftBank. Our host, Farnam Jahanian, President of Carnegie Mellon University. And David Sachs, President Trump's AI and crypto czar. Dina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Thanks for that warm introduction. It's a very important summit when you get Dennis Owens to be the MC. I want to just add to what Dave said as we start. We feel just overwhelmed today by so much pride in Pennsylvania, pride in all of our friends in Pennsylvania, pride that all of you believed enough in all of this to come today. And as Dave said, we maybe twisted a few arms, but it didn't take a lot of twisting to say that Pennsylvania is one of the best places in the world to invest. We were talking backstage, and one of the interesting things about this particular city is that Pittsburgh was a huge part of the first industrial revolution. And today, we hope we're marking the first day that it will be a huge part of the AI and energy revolution. So thank you to this incredible panel for being with us today. I'm going to start with what is going to be our largest announcement, a $25 billion commitment by Blackstone. Dave and I have known John Gray for many, many years. He has been to Pittsburgh before. A few people have not, but we're very grateful that he has. John, I'm so grateful that you're here. I know you're going to talk a little bit about the announcement, but I would love for you to start with the fact that Blackstone is the largest investor in data centers in the world. You actually started this almost 4 years ago. Love to hear about that journey and what you saw so many years ago that has led us here.
Well, I should start by saying congratulations to you, Dina, to Senator McCormick. Putting this together is a great event, but it also is so important for Pennsylvania and the country overall.
Thank you.
What I would say is, for us, we got at this a little bit indirectly. 4+ years ago, we found a company, QTS, which was publicly traded, a data center business. We thought the market didn't fully appreciate the potential. What we saw was there was real growth in demand of data for AI, not yet AI, but for online migration, cloud migration, data, and so forth. And after we bought the company, what we stumbled upon was hyperscalers were beginning to look for AI. And so the management of the company did a terrific job. We talked with them. We said, we should really go for this. And what we ended up doing was procuring a bunch of sites across the country at larger size. We got a bunch of steel we ordered, and we started designing essentially data centers for larger clusters of GPUs. And that has paid off in an enormous way. Today, the company has 10 times the amount of lease space that it did back when we bought it originally. And obviously, the outlook from here feels pretty darn good. So that's how we got here. And then once we got going, we said there's more opportunity. And so that led us to do large financings of other players in the space. We ended up leading financings for CoreWeave of more than $10 billion. We built up our capabilities in Europe. We bought the biggest data center company in Asia called AirTrunk. And so we've really gone all in, and it's made a huge difference for our investors in infrastructure and real estate. Today, what we're talking about is an announcement, as you noted, $25 billion, focused in two areas. One, building data centers in Northeast Pennsylvania. We'll talk about it a little later in the formal announcement, but we've identified several sites that we've secured to build large data centers, which we think is critically important. And then also, and Tag, the co-CEO of QTS, is here. We're also going to make an announcement with a utility here in the state to build a large number of potential generation plants, natural gas. And so what we're thinking about and what makes us so excited about this area is the idea that you can co-locate the data centers directly next to the source of power. And that's really the special sauce here, is being able to put these things together, because building transmission lines, building pipelines, that's really difficult. So if we can do the two in one place, and that's the advantage here. The other advantage, I'd say, of this state, obviously the intellectual capital, Carnegie Mellon University, the University of Pennsylvania, where I went. And I would say, and it's really important what you guys have done here, is the bipartisan support in this state for digital and energy infrastructure. In many states, it's really tough. You can't get folks on both sides of the aisle, but here you've got both senators, obviously, the governor, the president's coming today. Everybody is all in, and that is really important. If we're going to compete, if we're going to build this AI infrastructure, we've got to do it together, and so that's one of the things we love about this. That's why we've come here. We're making this big announcement.
Thank you. And it means a huge, huge amount. You mentioned the talent piece, and obviously we are at Carnegie Mellon University, and we're really proud because I think one of the things that I hope so many people that don't know as much about Pennsylvania is that high-skilled, lots of training, scientists, engineers, David Sachs knows this very well, but also an incredible labor force, workforce development, the building trades, construction jobs that are many union jobs as well. So I want to actually ask you, Farnham, how critical is talent in the AI race? And Carnegie Mellon, you could argue, was kind of first in line to think about who are the smartest engineers, what are the most important academic programs. Take your victory lap. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, Dina, again, thank you. Thank you for your support in organizing this. Again, grateful to the senator for convening this event, and again, to my fellow panelists for being here. You know, the truth is that we cannot win the AI race without winning the race for talent. Let me just share with you a couple of data points. 6 out of 10 businesses today say that they expect AI to transform their entire business. In fact, if you step back, 70% of the skills required for an average sort of job is expected to change within the next decade. I'll give you one more data point. Average half-life of most jobs is less than 5 years now. In fact, for some of the IT jobs, as HBR reported, it's 2.5 years. Actually, average half-life of a university president is even shorter, but we won't go there. But what we're seeing is a significant transformation for the future of work in the labor market. Every industry and market is going to be in flux. There's an absolute need to train scientists and engineers and the workforce to be ready for this economy that's changing. The fact is that this pace, this scope and scale of these changes, the transformation, is so rapid that we don't really have the time that we did, for example, during the mechanization of agriculture or industrial revolution, to wait to get there. So the urgency of that is absolutely there. One more data point besides, I'll give you some ideas about how do we go from here. Where do we go from here? Today, China produces more scientists and engineers with a bachelor's degree than the United States, Europe, and Japan put together. That's a staggering data. And these are, of course, data scientists, AI engineers, and so on. So in addition to investing in our innovation economy, which is supporting research, which has been at the core of national prosperity that we have enjoyed and national security for the past 75 years, this compact between universities and the federal government and, of course, the industry. We need to double down on it. But we also need to double down on educating, essentially, the next generation of talent that we're going to desperately need. And that doesn't mean just producing undergraduates and masters and PhDs. We need all of that, folks. There's no question about it. But we also need a new generation of skilled workers for factories, for farms, for hospitals, for schools, to build and apply AI. And this reskilling and upskilling is going to be a fundamental challenge facing every society, and absolutely the United States needs to win that race to be able to do it. The second point I want to make is that while we need to double down on the domestic talent, and by the way, domestic talent means working all the way from K through 12 through, of course, our colleges. We also need to have an immigration policies that allows us to recruit the best and the brightest to come to this country, because most of them who come get educated. In fact, our data is that 90% of them actually stay in this country and contribute to our society. The final point very quickly is that since we're talking about education. We often forget about the impact of AI in transforming education itself. That's something that we have underestimated in the last decade. CMU has been in this journey of behind the science of learning for more than 2 or 3 decades. What I want to tell you in a nutshell, we're at a point in society where we can use AI and the digital transformation to completely reimagine education from K through 12 all the way, including reskilling and upskilling, by making education much more personalized, much more adaptive and accessible with absolutely better outcome and essentially quantifiable outcome for all the students. So what I really am expecting, and I'm going to make a prediction, we are at the cusp of seeing the education around the world, but certainly in this country, being completely transformed as a result of access to AI. And that's going to become one of those defining moments for the nation to seize it, and we'll be ahead of everybody else. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Farnham. Well, you could argue that someone who really knows a lot about talent is the very talented David Sachs, who recruited incredible people his whole career, focused on areas of investment, developed some of the most important technologies. In other words, he really didn't need a job. But President Trump called him, asked him to come in. I can't think of a more important moment for the AI leader in government and a more important person to lead it. So we are not only grateful you're here, we're really grateful for your service to the country. And I hear you talk all the time when people push you on things like, you know, is the US winning the race? Do we have the right allies or not? One of the things that you feel strongest about is the talent in the United States and the investment in that talent.
That's right, Dina. So first of all, thank you for having me, and thanks to Senator McCormick for putting this all together. So President Trump did recruit me to be the first AI czar. And the mission that he gave us the very first week of his presidency was trying to figure out how we win this AI race, exactly the theme of this conference. And I think that, you know, what I've sort of boiled it down to is 3 things. So number 1 is innovation. We have to have the most innovation in the United States. We have to outcompete our global adversaries. There's just no substitute for that. You can't regulate your way to winning an innovation competition. So that's number 1, and I think the president has done a number of things already to get red tape out of the way so that America can innovate. In the United States, the innovation happens in the private sector. It's not the government that's doing the innovation. And so we need ultimately a government that's supportive towards the private sector and all the innovation that's happening. So President Trump, his first week in office, rescinded a 100-page Biden executive order that I think was unnecessarily imposed unnecessarily burdensome regulation on our AI companies. And there've been a number of actions like that to eliminate red tape. And the good news is that back in my home of Silicon Valley, there's just been an absolute startup explosion happening. And so a ton of new companies have been formed in this area of AI. So that's number 1 is innovation. Number 2 is infrastructure. We have to create the AI infrastructure that we need. And I know that John just spoke to this as well, and this, I think, will be a major theme in Pennsylvania. The new AI data centers are incredibly power hungry. We need a lot of electricity, and that means making it easier to generate new power in the United States. And I know that Pennsylvania is going to play a huge role in that. So, you know, we have to drill, baby, drill, and we have to build, baby, build. We have to keep, you know, building new power, new energy. The third area is what I would call the AI ecosystem. Every successful company in Silicon Valley knows that the way that you win is by building the biggest ecosystem for your technology. You build a platform, you build an app store. You want to have the most apps in your app store. And so we have to have this mentality of wanting to bring in partners from all over the world into our ecosystem. And this was, I think, one of the major themes of the president's trip to the Middle East just a few short weeks ago, where we want to bring more countries in for investment, and we also want to export the American technology stack. We want the whole world using our technology. We want to become the global standard because that's how you win a technology competition. And this is an area where I think that the thinking is a little different than what Washington has done in the past. I think Washington tends to have a little bit more of a command and control mindset, like we gotta control this, we got to hoard it. But I think that ultimately the way for the United States to win the AI race is to enable everyone all over the world to share in the bounties of AI so that they're building on our technology stack, the American technology stack. And I think there's a very simple metric for figuring out whether we're winning or not, which is just look at market share. You know, what is the market share of the American technology stack? If in 5 years we look around the world and American companies have, say, 80% market share, it means we won. But if we look around the world in 5 years and say Huawei has 80% market share, it means we did something very, very wrong. So I think that we in government need to have an approach of encouraging the private sector, encouraging startups, encouraging the talent to pursue all these different ideas, and helping to proliferate American technology so that, again, we become the global standard.
Well, I had the privilege of being with you when the president was in the Middle East as part of the business delegation, along with Ruth Porat and others. And I really was struck by how much you are open about that and pushing that we really do want to work with our allies. We want to work with our most important allies. What do you say to well, how do you figure out which allies? What are you concerned about? With some of them potentially sharing data, sharing resources with China and others? I think you've sort of taken an approach that there's a way to figure this out.
Well, I think with respect to, say, the Gulf states where we went, and I'm sure Khaldun can speak to this, these are countries that are longstanding partners and allies of the United States going back, 80 plus years. And we already have hostile relations with a country on one side of the Persian Gulf. Do we have to alienate everybody? But that is kind of what happened in the last administration, is that, I don't want to make this too partisan, but the previous president declared that he was going to make one of our Gulf partners a pariah. And in October of 2022, the US government imposed restrictions on all the Gulf states that they couldn't import servers-based semiconductors to build data centers. And I think that's a big mistake. Again, if we don't provide the technology, then our global competitors will. And I think we want data centers across the world to be built with American technology, because the alternative is really simple. It's going to be, if we don't, we're going to create pent-up demand for a Huawei Belt and Road. So to me, this is a really, really easy one. And I think this concern you sometimes hear about diversion, that somehow the chips will be diverted to China. It kind of gives people the impression that the chips are like diamonds in a briefcase that can be smuggled. They're not. They're mainframe computers. If you look at like the new generation of, I'm sure Renee can speak to this, I mean, the servers and data centers are 8 feet tall. They weigh 3,600 pounds. They have to be transported and installed with special equipment. Very easy to see where they're going, and I know that our Gulf state partners would honor our security agreement. This is ultimately a trust but verify situation, and all you have to do is send an inspector to a data center, and they can just count the racks. So, this concern, I think, has just been wildly blown out of proportion.
Got it. Well, this is a very good segue then to His Excellency Khaldun Al-Mubarak. I've known Khaldun so long, I didn't have to call him His Excellency. That 30 years ago when we met, when we were 5 and 10. But actually, personally, I always tell you this, I'm so incredibly proud of the leadership role that you have under His Highness Sheikh Mohammed. But I have to say, it's been remarkable to watch the UAE leadership in this space. I think it's part of why the President and David have a unique partnership with you, and we'll get into that with Renee and Stargate and other things. But take us back, because it's been a few years that you have been focused on investing across these platforms. And interestingly enough, I don't think you thought about it as we are going to invest in AI. You thought about it as we're going to invest in every piece of AI.
Well, first of all, Dina, thank you. It's really a pleasure being here today. I would like to say it's my first time in Pittsburgh. I actually thought it was my first time in Pittsburgh.
Oh.
But I realized when I got here that, no, I've been here maybe 25 years ago for a Steelers game.
Oh!
We won over the crowd.
We're very proud of that.
That's the only thing I remember. It was actually the Steelers game. But nevertheless, when Senator McCormick invited me to come here, and I thought, mid-July, Pittsburgh, am I going to be in mid-July in Pittsburgh? But it's very hard to say no to Dave. I've known Senator McCormick for also, I think, almost 25 years. and he's a great leader, a great friend, and I couldn't say no. Especially when Dina then follows up, because the follow-up is now double impossible to say no to, and of course.
Well, he didn't think it would happen because 4 weeks ago we had the honor of being with him and His Highness in Abu Dhabi. 4 weeks ago, and we said, there's going to be this incredibly important summit, and you're going to want to be here. And he said, yeah, that sounds good. Like, that's never going to happen.
But then I got the Dina follow-up. No, it's really a pleasure being here, and of course coming to this great state. And then we have a lot of touch points. Mubadala has been investing for many years in the United States. Just quickly, the UAE is one of the largest foreign investors in the U.S. We have many institutions that are one of the largest, again, sovereign investors in the United States. I run one of them, Mubadala. We have, almost over 40% of our portfolio is here in the U.S. in a very diversified portfolio. By the way, here, we just invested just almost a week ago in a big transaction in PCI Pharma, which is a great company based here, and we have a long history with Nova Chemical. So, we have a lot of touch points with this great state. So I'm happy to be here. And now, more importantly, obviously, the subject matter of this conversation is AI and the future and how what role we are trying to play in this new revolution. Similar to the state, when I come somewhere out, try to find touch points and analogies. My country suffered from an industrial revolution in the early 1900s, before we had oil and gas, or before we discovered oil and gas. Our main industry was pearl diving. So it was pearls. We used to dive for pearls. Our ancestors, generations ahead of it, that's what they did. And then we had a technological revolution by the Japanese back then, which was the artificial pearl. And you had a country or a nation that depended on one product, on one industry, that suddenly got disrupted by technology. And that was a huge lesson for us as a people. We then discovered oil and gas, and then the rest is history. But over the last 50 years, one of the things we focused on as a nation was not to make that same mistake again, not to suffer from a technological revolution that would take us back, years back and push us back into poverty. And oil and gas was a great blessing, obviously, but at some point, this was going to be disrupted, and I think that was the wise approach that our leadership and my government took many years ago. So we started diversifying the economy. And over these last 50 years, it's been a story of diversification. And today, when you look at many of these oil and gas nations, the UAE probably pops up as one of the most diversified as a country with an economy that's quite vibrant, quite strong. By the way, not too dissimilar from the state in terms of the size of the population, similar size of population, but a great economic story over this last 50 years. Over these last 10 years, we've been focusing on technology. And one of the things my company's been doing is really investing heavily in the multiple, diverse stacks of technology. Of course, the U.S. is one of the most, if the most important, obviously, recipient of our investments. You have incredible technology development. You know that. You have great research and development, great institutions, great universities. We're in one of them right now. By the way, I chair the first AI university, which is the MBZ AI University in the UAE. It was established 8 years ago. And we recruited our president from this great institution here.
They were a little grumpy about that.
Well,
He's still ours, though.
he's still yours. He's still a fellow. He's still yours. And that's another great example of collaboration between our two countries and two institutions. And in this case, again, technology partnership, because I think what David said is spot on. The race on AI is not just an industrial technological development race, but it's also a partnership race. And more partnerships that get established, you win this race, at least in my view, through partnership. And that's what we've been focusing on, really as a strategy, investing in the technology itself, investing, what do we have? What's our strengths? Our strength is energy, it's capital, and it's human capital. We have a small population that we focus a lot on the development of the human capital. These three factors, and I think when it comes to AI, I think fit very nicely. And I think we've identified that as really an edge, and we're utilizing that edge in trying to play a role in this technological revolution. The key is enablement. I think I've heard that word from John, from David. Enablement is key. And what we're doing a lot of right now is not just investing, but also enabling the technology. Today, if you go to the UAE, many of you have, probably most of the people in the room haven't here. Actually, when it comes to the enablement of AI, we're probably surprisingly one of the leaders in the world. Every board I sit in has an AI observer. I chair one of the largest banks in the UAE. I was at my board meeting actually yesterday morning, and we have an AI observer. Not yet voting, but we're looking at that.
Explain, because you explained this to me when we were there. What is an AI observer? It's actually looking to see, are you using AI effectively, but actually questioning some of your investments.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, again, let me use the example of Mubadala, which is obviously in our investment institution. Here in our investment committee, which I chair, we've developed over these last months our, let's say, AI co-pilot that sits with us in the investment committee. All the board members, all the investment committee members, obviously get to interact directly with the agent, and obviously the teams coming in, pitching us these investment propositions. We get to challenge, as what John does in every single meeting, the teams, but also we get to, I think, the edge, which is inevitably what we will use through that enablement and everything we do, the use of AI to support human decision-making in what we do, which is investing. And I think what I found, at least in now almost 1 year of implementation, is a huge learning curve. And really that capability is strengthening in a way that is phenomenal. And it's an advantage that we all have and that we have to utilize, but we have to take that leap into enablement. And that's what we're doing a lot of. Yeah. Sorry, I spent too much time on my answer. My apologies.
No, really interesting, because I think more and more companies like ARM are really thinking about how AI isn't just kind of your day job, but how it's transforming the company itself. Maybe share a little bit more about ARM, because you're very humble, Renee. I mean, ARM is literally in the center of the AI revolution. And in addition to that, Renee sits on the board of SoftBank and is one of the leaders of one of their largest AI investments, maybe the largest in the world, of course, Stargate. Give us a little bit more background on that and how you think about where we are in the AI revolution.
Sure. Well, thank you, Dina, and thank you to everyone for hosting us. Thank you to Farnham's beautiful university. I was born in Philadelphia, and I grew up in Rochester, New York, and my brother went to Carnegie Mellon. So this is not a very foreign place. This is a little bit like being at home.
Where do you vote, though? No, I'm just kidding.
I went to a school named Clarkson University, which was so cold that when we came to Pittsburgh, it seemed quite warm in the wintertime. But yes, I'm a Northeast guy by growing up. A little bit about ARM, and then why I think it's relevant to what's going on inside the AI space. ARM is a company that many of you may not have heard of, or maybe you have, but I can assure you that every single one of you has ARM either in your pocket, in your car, or in your home somewhere. We are the microprocessor that powers Android phones, iPhones, Nest thermostats, AI data centers, Ford F-150s. We're the most ubiquitous processor ever invented. The key tenet to what we do is all around power consumption and running off batteries. The company was conceived in Cambridge, UK, initially to be the first processor to run in the Apple Newton, if people remember that product. And the key innovation there was around, it had to be low power and not generate a lot of heat. So as a result, as more and more devices moved and became handheld and running off batteries, we became ubiquitous in terms of that technology. Now, going back to my snowy years at Clarkson, my first 3 years as an undergrad, the only way we could work in the computer lab was to literally go to the computer lab. We had mainframe computers everywhere. Everything was really running off, at that time, IBM mainframes. Personal computer was not yet invented. And then in 1983, Clarkson decided to take a leap, which didn't seem like a big leap in hindsight, but at the time it was, to enable every freshman with a personal computer, a Zenith Data Systems machine. And it allowed us to take that computer back into our dorm rooms and not have to go schlep through the snow to use the mainframe. That was 1983. Smartphone was invented in 2008, and now we have computing in our hands well beyond the power of those mainframes that we used in university back then. When we think about AI, and today we're putting tens and hundreds of megawatts, now single gigawatts of energy in these large AI data centers, which is required. These AI workloads that we're running are incredibly compute intensive. They're incredibly intense in terms of what's required to run the algorithms. There's no way you could run it in the palm of your hand, but I can assure you, in a number of years, you will. You will run them in the palm of your hand, you'll run them in your glasses, you'll run them in earbuds, you'll run them in something that we can't even conceive today. And that's what we're spending a lot of time at ARM working on, because ultimately, I think to achieve the full promise of AI, whether it's around security, whether it's around innovation, portability is going to be key. And to David's point, it's going to require a huge ecosystem to make this happen. I think he stated it very well. The winners in any technological race are around the partners you work with, the software applications, and the ecosystem. And I think, particularly with the new administration, it's really fantastic to see how involved, frankly, the government is in this, because it's required. We're in an unprecedented area. At ARM, we work very heavily with universities, including Farnham. ARM and Carnegie Mellon have a joint involvement in terms of R&D that we do work together. It's going to take universities, it's going to take private industry, and it's going to take government. And that is the way that ultimately winners are shaped and formed in this AI race. I do think power efficiency is going to be key, because maybe we get to 10 gigawatts, but when you start talking hundreds of gigawatts or terawatts, that's beyond what the planet can put together and deliver. So not only is there going to need to be innovation around the data centers, but I think there's going to need to be innovation about where these AI workloads run. And that's what we're spending a lot of time on at ARM.
And as you, maybe in your other hat, you advise Masa-san on how to think about implementing some of these huge announcements you've made, massive investments, multi-years. Very focused on robotics. I know, kind of winning the robotics race, because I saw with Khaldun a lot of the work that you're investing in and next generation robotics, et cetera. What criteria do you look for when you're investing, particularly in states?
Yeah, so I also sit on the board of SoftBank. SoftBank is a 90% owner of ARM. So I have shareholder meetings very frequently with my chairman about the state of robotics innovation. It's also another area, actually, we're working locally. There's a company called StackAV that we work with inside Pittsburgh, former folks who were part of Argo, which was an autonomous startup. Robotics is going to be a gigantic opportunity relative to what's going on in terms of AI. And it's all the areas of robotics, Dina. It's the models themselves. It's the algorithms that run on those models, companies that build actuators, materials. The robotics space in terms of factory automation and what that can mean, particularly for jobs in this country, will be transformative. So we are involved in really all those areas, including Stargate, which is a gigantic infrastructure project that was announced in January, again, with the administration, huge support from President Trump, a $500 billion investment over a number of years to build data centers in America, and also looking at sites here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, thank you. John, you were kind of nodding when Renee was talking about the evolution of the data center, because it's also possible that, yes, all this energy is needed, but of course the data centers themselves will innovate. How do you think about that part of your investment?
Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of questions these days about will data centers be needed? Will we have a bubble so far? At least at this point, and Renee would know much more, David, on the technology, still feels like we're going to need these physically. And so these large clusters, these large data centers are coming. the responsible thing we do in terms of investing is you don't put a shovel in the ground until you have a long-term lease with a major tenant. So the risk of sort of speculative development and big losses goes away. But I think back to Renee's comments, to me, the real limiting factor is the energy and the power, because you need chips, you need data centers, and you need power. And I think there's going to have to be innovation. But in the meantime, we've got to make major investments, which we are in generation, both renewables and natural gas, in transmission, with big investments in pipelines and hydro transmission, and then in the utilities, which are going to need a lot of capital because of electrification, because of the data centers, ultimately because of the robotics. So I think there's going to be innovation in terms of the data centers, their size, but ultimately, we've got to get better on power. In the meantime, I think it is the limiting factor. And so we've got to figure out how to go as a country that basically used the same amount of power for 20 years to think about 40 or 50% more power usage over the next decade. And as much as this technology is so exciting, unless we get the energy side right, we can't pursue this. So it's really important, and that's why having the government involved is so important, because this is big scale. Everybody's got to recognize the challenge, and private capital will be a really important part of the answer.
There also, though, talking about the energy, not risk, but needs that are very hard to figure out. But there's also not just promise in AI, there's questions about what it'll do to the workforce. Dario, of course, from Anthropic came out this week saying this is really going to fundamentally affect jobs, affect workforce training, livelihoods of so many people. Blackstone is invested in over 250 companies, 12,000 real estate assets around the world. How are you thinking about that? So the internal way this might affect Blackstone.
Look, we're thinking about it at every level. Obviously, on the investing side, to try to avoid buggy whip businesses, to try to find companies where you can apply this technology. If you can find rules-based companies in transaction processing or compliance or legal, where these machines can do things much more efficiently, and they'll become great tools for people. There's a lot of things people do in white-collar work today that they'd prefer not to. I also think there's going to be a level of creativity that's added. When you think about content creation, what these tools can do to augment what somebody who creates music or videos can do. There's also customer engagement. We can all have better experiences pretty much with everything we do when we reach out to companies. Coding gets better. And we as a firm are trying to do it at our portfolio company levels. We're trying to do it as a firm as well. Some of the things Haldun was describing, where we're gathering data, trying to make better decisions based on historical investment memos when we look at future memos, gathering the data to identify patterns. But there is this question. I think it's a longer-term question. I think in the near term, this is going to be a real productivity boom. And when people, talk about in investing, they're worried, is there bubbles out there and so forth. I really think we're on the edge of something like the railroad, like the automobile, electrification, certainly the internet, where we're going to see a step function increase in productivity and a step function increase in growth. So getting the infrastructure right to achieve that is super important. And yes, there's going to be some human cost. And I think governments, we need to think about over time how people get skills training to move into different careers.
David, I'd love you to comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on this topic of job loss, because it's omnipresent in the media right now. Is, will AI put everybody out of work? And so I think it's worth just thinking about this for a minute. I think whenever you have a technology revolution this big, there's always going to be three effects on the workplace. You're going to get some job creation, because there's going to be new companies and they're going to do new hiring. There's going to be productivity, so a job is not made or lost, but people are able to do their jobs better with new tools. And then there'll be some job displacement. I think, in my view, the first two are going to greatly exceed the third. But in the media environment we have right now, the only one you really hear about is the third. And it's just worth thinking about, a little over 100 years ago, not too far from here, Henry Ford developed the Model T, and you just wonder how would that be covered in today's media environment? It'd probably be horse and buggy makers put out of business, you know? And I think that the reason for this is the difference between what's seen and unseen. It's really easy to see when you get a big breakthrough that the horse and buggy guys are gonna go out of business. But what you don't see is that you're gonna get this new technology. You're gonna see this explosion in the number of cars, and that's gonna lead to McDonald's because you're gonna have drive-through windows, and it's gonna lead to Holiday Inn because you've got an interstate highway system, and it's gonna lead to car culture and American graffiti and NASCAR and F1. These are all the unseen things. And it's hard to see those things because it takes visionaries to see those things. You know, in Silicon Valley, if you're a VC and you're right 20% of the time, you're pretty much like top of the game, right? So even people whose job it is to see the future it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And the future is created by entrepreneurs who have a vision, who pursue it with a lot of trial and error. So obviously, where all the new jobs are gonna come from, that's like a hard thing to explain, right? Because we can't see all the new companies that haven't been created yet.
Right.
We just see the horse and buggy. But I feel very confident that this will follow the pattern of previous technology revolutions, and you will get an explosion in the productivity and the job creation.
You wanted to jump in on this?
Yeah,
Ray?
I agree with David. And you know, if I think about our world where 10 years ago it may have taken 100 people or 200 people to design a big part of a circuit, today that number is 10 times. And a lot of the time is being spent on identifying bugs, verifying the design, et cetera, et cetera. AI is going to be amazing in terms of helping that. And that's going to create space for new ideas. I believe that, and Dario is a brilliant scientist, I would not want to debate him on this topic, but I think until we run out of ideas, the productivity gains we're going to see from AI are going to be amazing. And inside our company, what we are short on is people who can generate ideas and go work on new projects, because the projects we work on are so labor intensive. To Farnham's comment in terms about the number of engineers that we put out in the United States, Europe, and Japan compared to China, AI is going to help us immensely in that space. So cannot get enough of it. We are using it heavily inside our company. The benefits we're seeing is not replacing jobs, it's accelerating work. And it's actually accelerating new ideas. And I think new ideas is a very human thing that I think AI is still a ways away from.
I know you want to get in on this, Farnham, and then I want to ask Khaldun how he thinks about that from the companies he's investing in.
To David's point, and also to your point, imagine the things that we're able to do just today, where 10 years ago, we couldn't have imagined it. And I'm a computer scientist, and I'm surrounded by computer scientists. So there are people who can envision this, you're absolutely right. But what's incredible about the new generation of AI systems is that we're able essentially to apply it and integrate it into businesses without changing the workflow at times. That's a really profound business model of, in fact, some of these institutions. So that's a profound change that we're gonna see, and it's gonna have a ripple effect across all industries. What's great is if you step back and look at what's happening, we're at a point that we can augment and at times even outperform, I should say, human capabilities, both physically and cognitively. And if we're able to do that from vision to speech to decision-making and ultimately creativity, it is not only going to make a lot of things more efficient, but perhaps human beings also can focus on a lot of things that are also grunt work that we don't like to do. The final point that I want to make, and it's really echoing what David just said, it's really important, as for a university president, you can see that I'm committed to this. It's really important to educate the next generation. We need more scientists, we need more engineers, we need all sorts of skills. But we can't forget that in the best of times, only 35% of our population gets a college degree. Let me repeat that. In the best of times, only 35%. We have to create pathways into this economy that we're creating that's going to bring everybody along. That's a moral responsibility that all of us have. It's not a comment against universities or against anything. It actually is a comment about we have a responsibility working with our community colleges, vocational training, to create a workforce that's going to embrace this future that we all believe is just around the corner. And we're in a race to win it.
And Khaldoon, when you're sitting, at the investment committee at Mubadala, you're thinking about, what's next. And in fact, you said recently, we don't think anymore in 5 and 10-year increments, it's 3 years. That's how fast the world is changing. But how does that workforce piece of it impact you when you're thinking about investing in companies?
Well, I think I echo a lot of what particularly David said. The future, it's not the $1 million question anymore, it's the $1 trillion question. We can't predict really what's the new jobs of the future. This is going to happen, or it's happening as we speak. The world is changing so fast, and the impact of AI is dramatic on every industry. But it's also very exciting because, to his point, let's look at healthcare as an example. The impact over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years is extraordinary in that space. People are going to live longer. People are going to live healthier. And that in itself is a massive disruption on healthcare, on the whole biomedical, biotech space, has a massive impact on new companies, new creations for longevity. This is one massive space that is going to create a lot of new companies and a lot of new jobs. That's one angle. Energy is another one. Of course, it's going to make, we're seeing it already. It's going to get cheaper and cheaper to produce that oil barrel, that BTU of gas. The creation of new technologies from fusion, new SMRs and nuclear. All that is going to be exponentially faster with this infusion of AI, and that's, again, new companies, new businesses, new entrepreneurs, new jobs. So all of that is happening as we speak, and that's very exciting. And when we, from an investment perspective, we take these theses and we follow them, that's how we look at things. We don't know all the answers, but I think we can take a projection and a trajectory of where it's going, and it's definitely absolutely more than half full. Countries, governments really have to pay a lot of attention towards retooling and reskilling these workforces. That's really where the governments, I believe, have to spend a lot of time on one angle, and from another angle, unleashing the private sector, unleashing entrepreneurship, unleashing the technology space, because in itself, that will help governments solve the bigger problem.
That's great. Well, I can't believe we're almost out of time, and we have a couple of audience questions. I may just have time for one. What is your very favorite thing about Pennsylvania, and how much more do you want to invest in here? I'm just kidding.
I was going to tell you my wife's from Pennsylvania, so that's definitely number one for me.
That's right. Your wife's from Pennsylvania. No, actually, it's been such an honor to have all of you with us today. David, thank you to you and President Trump for focusing on this critical issue. I know he's optimistic about the future of AI and our country's ability to succeed in it, and it's just so awesome to have you all here. We're really grateful. Thank you so much.
You're the best.
You're so good. You're awesome.